The alien medical ship picked up the emergency distress call from the damaged human vessel at exactly 23:42 Galactic Standard Time. Thomas Evans had been drifting in the escape pod for nearly 6 days, his oxygen supply dangerously low, when the sleek silver spacecraft appeared like a mirage against the backdrop of distant stars. Human vessel, this is the Zexian medical frigate Heelstar. We are locking tractor beams and bringing you aboard for emergency assessment. A voice crackled through his pod's failing communication system. Thomas could barely form a coherent response. Dehydration and oxygen deprivation had left him weak and disoriented. His mining vessel had been caught in an asteroid storm near the outer rim, forcing him to abandon ship with nothing but the clothes on his back and the standard issue escape pod. He managed to activate the emergency transponder before passing out. The next thing Thomas knew, he was being carried through sterile white corridors by 4 blue-skinned beings wearing what appeared to be medical uniforms. Their elongated limbs moved with surprising gentleness as they transferred him onto a floating examination platform. "Patient is severely dehydrated, showing signs of hypoxia and malnutrition," said one of the aliens, holding some sort of scanning device over Thomas's body. "Administer fluid replacement therapy and oxygen supplementation immediately." Thomas tried to speak, but his parched throat produced only a raspy wheeze. A cool mist sprayed across his face, and suddenly breathing became easier. He felt a tingling sensation spread through his body as fluids were somehow being absorbed directly through his skin. "Where am I?" Thomas finally managed to ask. The alien closest to him turned, revealing large, multifaceted eyes that reminded Thomas of insect eyes, though the face was oddly humanoid otherwise. "You are aboard the Heelstar, human. I am Chief Medical Officer Zexian. You are safe now." Thomas attempted to sit up but found his limbs too weak to cooperate. "My ship. Destroyed according to our scans," Zexian replied. "You were fortunate to escape with your life. Many do not survive the asteroid fields in this sector." The medical team continued their assessment, moving strange devices over his body while speaking in their native language a series of clicks and whistles that the ship's translation system converted to English for Thomas's benefit. "Vital signs stabilizing," another alien reported. "Cellular regeneration commencing." Thomas felt strength returning to his limbs as the alien medical technology worked its magic. Whatever they were doing, it was far more advanced than anything available in the human colonies. "Can you sit up now?" Zexian asked after several minutes of treatment. Thomas nodded and slowly pushed himself into a sitting position. The room spun briefly, then steadied. He was in what appeared to be an emergency treatment bay, surrounded by equipment that blinked and pulsed with alien symbols. "Thank you," Thomas said sincerely. "I thought I was done for out there." Zexian made a gesture that might have been their equivalent of a nod. "It is our duty to provide medical assistance to all sentient beings in distress. The Galactic Medical Corps recognizes no borders when lives are at stake." As Thomas became more alert, he began to notice details about his saviors. The Zexians had blue skin with a slightly metallic sheen, 4 fingered hands, and those large, faceted eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested their skeletal structure was different from humans. "We have not encountered many of your species in this sector," Zexian commented while checking Thomas's vital signs on a floating holographic display. "Our database has limited information on human physiology." "I'm a mining scout," Thomas explained. "My company sent me to survey the asteroid field for rare minerals. Not many humans venture this far out." Zexian seemed about to respond when another alien rushed into the treatment bay. This one wore a different uniform with insignia that suggested higher rank. "Dr. Zexian, initial scans indicate the human may be carrying unknown pathogens. Quarantine protocols are recommended." Thomas felt a flicker of concern. "Pathogens? I'm not sick." Zexian turned to the newcomer. "Medical Director Vreen, our preliminary scans showed no signs of infectious agents." The medical director approached cautiously, examining the holographic display. The biofilters detected unusual microorganisms on the human's epidermal layer. They may be harmless to the human but potentially dangerous to our crew, Thomas tried to explain. Those are probably just normal skin bacteria. All humans have them. They're part of our natural microbiome. The aliens exchanged looks that Thomas couldn't interpret. Zexian approached with a new scanning device, holding it just above Thomas's arm. Fascinating. The microorganisms appear to be in symbiotic relationship with the human cells. We should document this for the xenobiology database. The medical director remained unconvinced. Until we can confirm these organisms pose no threat, I recommend full quarantine procedures. Thomas sighed. This wasn't the first time he'd encountered alien misunderstandings about human biology. During his years working the Outer Rim, he'd had several similar experiences. Once, an alien customs official had been convinced his fingernails were parasitic growths. "I assure you, I'm perfectly healthy by human standards," Thomas said. "Nevertheless, we must follow protocol," the medical director insisted. "Prepare the quarantine chamber." Two medical assistants approached with what looked like a transparent environmental suit. As they helped Thomas into it, he couldn't help but feel like a specimen being prepared for study. The suit sealed around him with a soft hiss, creating a barrier between him and the alien environment. "This is just a precaution," Zexian explained. "Once we complete a full analysis, we can determine if isolation is necessary." Thomas was led to a separate room, a clear chamber with a bed and basic facilities. Through the transparent walls, he could see aliens in the adjacent laboratory, analyzing samples and discussing their findings. After what seemed like hours, Zexian approached the quarantine chamber wearing what appeared to be their version of protective gear. "We have completed our initial analysis," the alien doctor announced. "Your bacterial flora is indeed unique, but appears to pose minimal risk to our crew with proper precautions." "That's what I tried to tell you," Thomas said, trying not to sound irritated. "However," Zexian continued, "we have discovered several concerning anomalies in your physical structure that require immediate attention." Thomas felt a twinge of alarm. "What kind of anomalies?" Zexian activated a holographic display showing a magnified image of what Thomas recognized as human skin. "Your epidermal layer appears to be riddled with microscopic openings," the alien explained, genuine concern in its voice. "These could be entry points for harmful pathogens or evidence of a parasitic infestation." Thomas stared at the image for a moment before bursting into laughter, which quickly turned into a coughing fit due to his still recovering condition. "Those are just pores," he explained once he caught his breath. "All humans have them. They're completely normal." Zexian looked unconvinced. "Intentional perforations in a protective barrier seem evolutionarily counterproductive." "They're not perforations," Thomas explained. "They're tiny openings for sweat glands and hair follicles. They help regulate our body temperature and release oils that protect our skin." The alien made notes on a floating display. "Fascinating adaptation. Your species evolved on a planet with significant temperature fluctuations, correct?" Thomas nodded. "Earth has everything from freezing polar regions to scorching deserts. Our bodies adapted to handle those changes." The conversation was interrupted when another medical officer rushed into the laboratory, speaking rapidly to Zexian in their native language. The translation system caught only fragments. "Full body scan. Critical issue. Immediate intervention required." Zexian turned back to Thomas, multifaceted eyes somehow conveying alarm. "We need to perform a more comprehensive examination immediately. Our deep scans have detected what appear to be extensive internal cavities and passages throughout your body." "Those are probably just normal human organs and systems," Thomas tried to explain, but the aliens were already preparing equipment. "Please remain calm," Zexian instructed as the quarantine chamber filled with a soft blue light. "This is a non-invasive procedure." Thomas felt a tingling sensation as the scan progressed. On the holographic display, a detailed three-dimensional image of his body appeared, showing his skeletal structure, organs, and circulatory system. The alien medical team gathered around the display, pointing and discussing in rapid clicks and whistles. Thomas couldn't follow their conversation, but their body language suggested confusion and concern. Finally, Zexian approached the chamber again. "Human Evans, we have detected multiple serious abnormalities in your physiology that require immediate medical intervention." "What abnormalities?" Thomas asked, now genuinely worried. Zexian pointed to the holographic display. "Your body contains numerous hollow spaces and channels. There are large cavities in your skull, connected to openings in your face. Your torso contains several large empty chambers, and your entire body is threaded with tubular passages." Thomas almost laughed again. "Those are my sinuses, lungs, and blood vessels. They're supposed to be there." The alien medical team exchanged glances. "Additionally," Zexian continued, "we've detected periodic electrical discharges in your central neural cluster and a constantly contracting muscular pump circulating red liquid throughout your body." "My brain and heart," Thomas clarified. "Those are normal too." Medical Director Vreen joined the conversation, approaching the quarantine chamber. "Human Evans, with all due respect to your cultural beliefs, these anomalies are clearly life-threatening. The large cavities in your torso periodically expand and contract, and the openings in your face connect directly to these cavities." "That's how I breathe," Thomas explained. "Those are my lungs taking in oxygen." The aliens seemed skeptical. Vreen turned to Zexian. "Prepare for emergency surgery. We must seal these openings and drain the cavities before they collapse." Thomas sat bolt upright. "Absolutely not. You'll kill me if you do that." Zexian hesitated. "The human appears convinced these abnormalities are natural components of their physiology." "Of course they are," Thomas insisted. "Look, don't you have information about humans in your database? Records from previous encounters or medical files?" "Our interactions with humans have been limited," Vreen admitted. "The database contains only basic information." Thomas thought quickly. "Can your ship communicate with the human diplomatic corps? They can send you complete medical references for human physiology." The aliens conferred briefly before Vreen nodded. "We will attempt communication. Until then, we will monitor your condition closely." As the medical team dispersed to contact human authorities, Zexian remained by the quarantine chamber, studying Thomas with scientific curiosity. "May I ask you some questions about human physiology while we wait?" the alien doctor asked. Thomas nodded, relieved that they weren't rushing him into unnecessary surgery. "Of course. These openings in your face," Zexian began, "pores, nostrils, mouth, eyes, ears," Thomas listed, "and they are all intentional features?" Zexian asked, sounding astonished. "Yes. They all serve important functions." Zexian made notes on a floating display. "And the numerous microscopic holes covering your entire epidermal layer, those are my pores," Thomas explained. "They release sweat to cool me down and oils to protect my skin. They're also where hair grows from." The alien seemed fascinated. "Your species intentionally has thousands of openings in your protective outer layer. This seems dangerously vulnerable to infection." "Our immune system handles most threats," Thomas explained. "The benefits outweigh the risks. Without pores, we couldn't regulate our body temperature properly." Zexian moved closer to the quarantine chamber, studying Thomas's face. "Remarkable. Our species evolved on a world with minimal temperature variation and high pathogen loads. Our exterior is completely sealed against environmental threats." Thomas looked more closely at Zexian's blue skin, noting its smooth, almost plastic-like appearance. "No openings at all, only for essential functions, and those are protected by multiple filtration mechanisms," Zexian explained. "We have specialized respiratory membranes that extract oxygen directly from our environment without creating vulnerable pathways to our internal organs." Their conversation was interrupted when Vreen returned, accompanied by another alien wearing what appeared to be a command uniform. "We have made contact with a human medical station in the Proxima system," Vreen announced. "They are transmitting comprehensive human anatomical and physiological data." The new alien introduced himself as Captain Grek of the Heelstar. "Human Evans, we apologize for any distress our medical procedures may have caused. We are programmed to respond to what we perceive as life-threatening conditions. I understand, Thomas replied. Different evolutionary paths lead to different biological solutions. As the human medical data began streaming in, the alien medical team gathered around holographic displays, studying the information with intense interest. Thomas could see expressions of surprise, or what he interpreted as surprise given their alien features as they compared the reference material with their scans of his body. After several minutes, Zexian returned to the quarantine chamber. It appears you were correct. What we perceived as abnormalities are indeed normal features of human anatomy. Does this mean I can get out of this chamber now? Thomas asked hopefully. Vreen approached, looking somewhat embarrassed again, as far as Thomas could interpret alien expressions. We must maintain quarantine protocols until we fully understand the microorganisms living on your skin, but we no longer believe your physical structure requires medical intervention. Thomas settled back on the bed. That's a relief. I wasn't looking forward to explaining to other humans how I let aliens seal up all my pores. Over the next few days, Thomas remained in quarantine while the alien medical team studied the human medical database and conducted non-invasive tests. They seemed particularly fascinated by the concept of human skin. Your epidermis is constantly shedding and regenerating, Zexian noted during one examination, and these pores allow oils and waste products to exit the body directly through the skin. That's right, Thomas confirmed. Our skin is actually our largest organ. Incredible, Zexian commented. In comparison, our exterior layer is a permanent structure that grows with us but does not shed or regenerate unless damaged. As the aliens became more comfortable with human biology, they allowed Thomas greater freedom within the quarantine area. They provided him with food synthesized to match human nutritional needs and adjusted the environmental controls to Earth normal temperature and humidity. 5 days after his rescue, Medical Director Vreen entered the quarantine area wearing only minimal protective gear, a significant change from the full environmental suits they had worn previously. Our analysis is complete, Vreen announced. We have determined that your biological systems, while radically different from our own, are functioning normally by human standards. Additionally, we have developed countermeasures to protect our crew from any potential harm from your microbial companions. So I'm free to go, Thomas asked. Yes, Vreen confirmed. Captain Grek has plotted a course to the nearest human outpost. We should arrive within 3 standard days. The quarantine field deactivated with a soft hum, and Thomas stepped out, feeling relieved to be free of the confined space. Before you leave our care, Zexian said, would you be willing to participate in a more thorough documentation of human biology for our medical database? Your experience could help prevent similar misunderstandings in future human-Zexian encounters. Thomas agreed, and over the next 3 days, he worked with the alien medical team to create detailed records of human physiology. The aliens remained particularly fascinated by human skin and its functions. These pores serve multiple purposes, Zexian noted while examining magnified images of Thomas's skin. They release perspiration for cooling, sebum for protection, and provide passage for hair growth. Truly a remarkable evolutionary adaptation. I never thought much about it, Thomas admitted. It's just how humans are built. Different environments demand different solutions, Zexian observed. Our homeworld has a highly corrosive atmosphere. A permeable skin like yours would be fatal there. As the Heelstar approached the human outpost, Captain Grek invited Thomas to the command center to discuss his return to human space. We have contacted the outpost authorities, Grek explained. They are expecting you and have arranged transportation back to your home colony. I can't thank you enough for saving my life, Thomas said sincerely. It is our purpose, Grek replied. The Galactic Medical Corps exists to preserve life in all its forms. Before docking with the human station, Thomas had one final meeting with the medical team. Zexian presented him with a small device. This contains all the medical data we collected during your stay, along with treatments we provided, the alien explained. Your human doctors may find it useful. Thank you, Thomas said, pocketing the device. This whole experience has been educational for us as well, Zexian replied. Your biology has expanded our understanding of how diverse life can be. As Thomas prepared to disembark, Zexian made one final observation. It occurs to me that what initially appeared to be vulnerabilities in your physiology, these pores and openings, are actually sophisticated adaptations that serve essential functions. Perhaps there is a lesson there about how we perceive differences. Thomas nodded. Sometimes what looks like a weakness from one perspective is actually a strength from another. The docking procedure completed with a gentle shudder, and the airlock opened to reveal the familiar environment of a human space station. Before stepping through, Thomas turned back to the alien medical team. Next time you encounter a human, he said with a smile, try not to panic about all the holes. We're designed that way. Zexian made the Zexian gesture that Thomas had learned was their equivalent of a smile. We will remember. Safe journey, Human Evans. Thomas stepped through the airlock and was greeted by station personnel who had been briefed on his rescue. As medical officers escorted him to the station's infirmary for standard post-rescue evaluation, he couldn't help but think about how his perception of his own body had changed. So you were rescued by Zexians? The human doctor asked, as she scanned Thomas with familiar human medical equipment. They're not common in this sector. They were convinced I was dying because I had pores, Thomas explained, laughing. The doctor smiled. We've had similar issues with other species. Last month, a Dravian medical ship was convinced a human passenger was suffering from some kind of calcium deposit disease. Let me guess, they were looking at his teeth, Thomas asked. Exactly. They couldn't understand why humans would have exposed bone structures in their mouths. As Thomas recovered in the station's medical bay, he found himself thinking about the fundamental differences between species and how those differences shaped their understanding of the universe. What seemed normal and necessary to humans might appear dangerous or bizarre to aliens with different evolutionary histories. 3 weeks later, fully recovered and assigned to a new mining vessel, Thomas was preparing for his next mission when he received a message on his personal communication device. It was from Zexian, transmitted through the Galactic Medical Corps network. Human Evans, I am pleased to inform you that your case has led to the development of a new training program for Zexian medical personnel who may encounter humans. We now have comprehensive guides to human physiology, with special emphasis on understanding that pores and other bodily openings are not medical emergencies. Your patience with our misunderstanding has potentially saved many humans from unnecessary medical interventions. May your pores function optimally. Thomas laughed out loud, drawing curious looks from his new crewmates. He sent a brief reply, glad to hear it. My pores and I are doing just fine. As his new mining vessel departed the station, Thomas reflected on how his near-death experience had turned into a valuable cultural exchange. The universe was full of different life forms with different solutions to the challenges of survival. What appeared as dangerous abnormalities to one species might be essential adaptations to another. The incident had also given him a new appreciation for his own body, the complex systems and structures that he had always taken for granted. Even something as simple as skin pores represented millions of years of evolutionary refinement, perfectly adapted to Earth's environment. 6 months later, Thomas's mining vessel made an unexpected discovery, a previously uncharted asteroid rich in rare minerals. The company decided to establish a permanent mining operation, which would require regular medical support. To Thomas's surprise, the Galactic Medical Corps assigned the Heelstar as the medical support vessel for the new mining operation, citing their newly acquired expertise in human physiology as a valuable asset. When the Heelstar docked with the mining station, Thomas was there to greet the alien medical team. Zexian emerged from the airlock, immediately recognizable despite being among several other Zexians. Human Evans, the alien doctor said warmly, it is good to see you again. I trust your pores are functioning optimally, Thomas laughed. "They're doing just fine, thanks to you. We have been assigned to provide medical support for your mining operation," Zexian explained. "Our experience with your biology made us the logical choice." "I'm glad to hear it," Thomas replied, "though I hope you won't panic the first time you see a human sneeze." Zexian's multifaceted eyes seemed to twinkle with what might have been amusement. "We have extensively studied human respiratory functions. Though I must admit, the forceful expulsion of air and mucus through facial openings still seems like an alarming response to irritants." Over the following months, the Zexian medical team became an integral part of the mining operation. They quickly adapted their techniques and equipment to better serve human patients, while the human miners learned to understand Zexian communication styles and cultural norms. Thomas found himself serving as an unofficial liaison between the two species, helping to smooth over misunderstandings and explain cultural differences. His experience as the human with holes in his face had given him unique insight into how differently species could perceive something as fundamental as biology. 1 year after his rescue, the mining company hosted a celebration marking the successful first year of operations. During the festivities, Captain Grech presented Thomas with a special commendation from the Galactic Medical Corps. "For your contribution to interspecies medical understanding," the captain announced, "and for your patience in explaining why humans are supposed to have holes in their faces." The gathered crowd of humans and Zexians laughed appreciatively. Thomas accepted the commendation with a smile. "I never thought my pores would make me famous," he joked, "but I'm glad they've helped build bridges between our species." Later that evening, as humans and Zexians mingled in the station's recreation area, Thomas found himself in conversation with Zexian about the future of interspecies medicine. "We have learned much from your species," the alien doctor commented. "Not just about human biology, but about different approaches to medical care." "How so?" Thomas asked. "Zexian medicine traditionally focuses on maintaining physiological perfection," Zexian explained. "Any deviation is considered a flaw to be corrected." "But human medicine seems to embrace variation and adaptation," Thomas nodded. "Humans come in all shapes and sizes. What's normal can vary widely." "This perspective has value," Zexian acknowledged. "It has caused us to reconsider some of our own medical practices." As the celebration continued around them, Thomas reflected on how a potentially disastrous misunderstanding had transformed into an opportunity for growth and cooperation. His holes, the pores that had so alarmed the alien medics, had ultimately become a point of connection rather than division. The mining operation continued to flourish, becoming a model for human-Zexian cooperation. Medical protocols were established that accounted for the physiological differences between species, and cross-training programs ensured that both human and Zexian medical personnel could provide emergency care regardless of the patient's species. 2 years after his rescue, Thomas was promoted to operations manager for the mining station. During the ceremony marking his promotion, he made a point of acknowledging the Zexian medical team's contribution to the operation's success. "When I was floating in that escape pod, I never imagined that being rescued would lead to all this," he said, gesturing to the assembled humans and Zexians. "I certainly never thought my skin pores would become the foundation for interspecies cooperation." The audience laughed, and Thomas continued, "But that's the beauty of exploring the universe. Sometimes the most profound connections come from the most unexpected places, even the tiny holes in our faces." As Thomas concluded his speech, he couldn't help but feel that his near-death experience had led to something truly meaningful. The initial alarm over his pores had evolved into mutual respect and understanding between species that had previously known little about each other. The human skin, with all its pores and openings features that had initially seemed like dangerous abnormalities to the Zexians, had become a symbol of how different evolutionary paths could lead to equally valid biological solutions. What seemed like vulnerability from one perspective was sophisticated adaptation from another. And in that understanding lay the promise of a future where diverse species could work together. recognizing that their differences were not flaws, but simply different answers to the same universal questions of survival and thriving. As Thomas looked out at the faces, both human and alien, before him, he knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with countless species and endless variations of life. Each encounter, each misunderstanding overcome, brought all of them one step closer to truly understanding the magnificent diversity of existence, and it had all started with a simple observation: you have holes in your face.